Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It's our daily or weekly hit with Jay Leman. I could do daily with Jay, but I don't want to take up too much of his time. And Jay, all the good vibes of week one. We knew UTSA was worthy of a little bit of fretting because they're a good football team. But man, you just couldn't have two great weeks in a row for Illinois football, huh?
Well, this is Illinois football, right? I mean, we can't stand success too much, right? I mean, like we have a little bit of success and then we take a step back. But you know, I will say, people say this is so typical Illinois. We see a lot of teams do this. It wasn't too many years ago. Northwestern got beat by Illinois State. Iowa's had its run with MAC teams in the preseason with UNI and Central Michigan years ago. And so it's not always just a cakewalk. We knew that UTSA was an experienced team. But at the end of the day, you're at home against a non-Power 5 opponent. You need to win these football games and take the steps in the right direction. Now, if you say, would I take a Nebraska win or I'd take a UTSA win? And some people say, well, you're supposed to win the UTSA on paper, but I think Nebraska all over, right? I mean, because you're recruiting against Nebraska and it's a divisional win. And so I think that builds a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I think this one is more the fans are really disappointed, right? Brett Bielema ended his press conference saying, I don't like it, I don't accept it, and we have to learn from it. But it doesn't stop you from doing better in the Big Ten West, right? Like if you want to win, I know Big Ten championship game is unlikely for Illinois, but it doesn't hurt you with that. It hurts you with a bowl appearance, right? It hurts you with momentum. Like, what is it like in a locker room after that kind of loss, Jay, to a team that you feel like you shouldn't have lost to, coming after a big win?
Yeah. One of the biggest losses that I felt, was we went on the road in 2006 to beat Michigan State, and we came back and we had back-to-back losses to Indiana, who wasn't that good, and Ohio. Yeah. And that was hard. We should have beat that Ohio team, and when we didn't beat them. And it does really take the wind out of your sails. I mean, it's really tough to bounce back from that. But, and especially when you have a senior laden team when these guys are like, this is our last shot. Right. And so I think it's difficult, but I think if you zoom out, sometimes we want to zoom in, we zoom out. I still believe, despite all the mistakes we saw, it just feels like Illinois has an identity and a plan. Now, is it executed all the time? No. Were there holes in that plan? Absolutely. Right. But at the end of the day, Brett Bielema's got to say to his team, all our goals are still intact, right? If our goal is to get to the Big Ten championship game, that's still intact. But it's a tough turnaround right here with playing at Virginia. Bronco Mendenhall's, a coach, very established coach, always has tough defensive teams. I don't think Bryce Perkins is there anymore, the quarterback.
No. Brennan Armstrong, who's been pretty good, at 300 passing yards and a couple of touchdowns last week.
So they usually got a guy at quarterback, and then they've got to turn around 6 days later and play a Maryland team that can obviously air it out with Talia Tagovailoa. You got to get that right before the game. So it's a tough little turnaround right here. They got to go to Virginia and then back home to play in 6 days against Maryland. So this is a real test on where they're at. Unfortunately, the injuries seem to be piling up a little bit, right? We missed Calvin Hart in that game. We'll talk about that, but we missed Calvin Hart. And, I think, I don't know what the synopsis was on Roderick Perry, but it didn't look good in the game. So we shall see.
I think you met Keith Randolph. Yeah,
Keith Randolph. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Keith. Brett said he wasn't out for the season, but they're still waiting for more. But that's at least a positive. But you're going to be without him for a while. And CJ Hart and Keith Randolph were two of your best defenders so far in the season. Before I want to start with the defense with you, Jay, as we usually do. But I do want to can we do one positive here from a coaching aspect? The game management of Brett Bielema has really stood out to me. At the end of the half, they had a chance to double dip like they did against Nebraska. Now, the Kirby Joseph mishap there where he didn't know where he was. Donnie Navarro didn't catch it and let it bounce. And part of that's luck. But you had the chance to take the lead before halftime. And then to have all three timeouts, to kick it in the back of the end zone for your defense to execute when it wasn't executing, but to have a chance at the end, like there's just a little game management things, Jay, of time management, all those things. I think Brett Bielema is handled pretty well. So I know it's a loss and didn't end up mattering, but it could have.
I think that is a great point, Jeremy. I think it also starts with, in not being able, wasn't at the game. So I didn't know if they won the toss and they deferred.
Yeah.
What? So he's deferred maybe twice now. We've kicked off first. And that's an interesting play. The Iowa Hawkeyes, even though they're a defensive team, have always been a team that says, we're going to take the ball and we're going to do it. Now he's deferred twice. And I thought he did a tremendous job as far as there was a chance for them to score. And that's right in the second quarter. Right. And on another note, a couple of times the defense did blow up in the red zone. I think that was another positive where they caused 3 field goals. Right. And that was one of the sudden change moments where it could have been a lot of momentum and they kind of stymied it a little bit. But as far as the end of game 2, I mean, you knew when Brady ran in for the big run that you had to get 2 scores, right? So how do you get 2 scores? Well, it's down 10. He had to get the field goal and he had to get the touchdown. And, I think it was a more doable 4th down in that red zone. He would have gone for it. And but he got James McCourt out there and McCourt hit, I think it was a 32-yarder at that point to give us a chance. Right. And then he had all 3 timeouts left. They got the stop they needed and really had plenty of time. I think the one mistake, that they could go as far as the game management and they thought it would hit was the run play, at about the 25 that took up some precious clock and really made them have to take more shots in the end zone rather than run their offense. And it's just very apparent that we just don't have a big guy to go up and get balls other than Deuce Spann and Daniel Barker. I mean, Luke Ford was not a factor, whether just because Sitkowski didn't look for him or not, but there's just not a guy that's big. I mean, I love Isaiah Williams. He's coming into his own 100 yards receiving, but he's 5'10".
Right.
And I think that's hard. So, but the game management, I thought he did a tremendous job of the game management. I think he did a great job. And that's something we haven't necessarily seen in the 2-minute situations in the past decade or so.
Yeah, putting it lightly. All right, Jay, let's get into the defense because that's the bigger concern for me today, which after Nebraska, I know we were both very encouraged by what we saw from Ryan Walters, but
sure.
First half, especially Zakari Franklin, I think it was 8 receptions for 113 yards. And it felt very reminiscent of what we'd seen so many times under Lovie Smith, where guys are just running open. He was just open. It was quick hitters. Why was Zakari Franklin and Frank Harris so successful against Illinois' pass defense?
Yeah. So on a bigger notion, I thought something we haven't seen in a while is the Illinois coaches make adjustments. And I think they did make adjustments. So it showed that they made some adjustments that helped, but early on, there was some soft zone. There was some what they call bail man. You have a big cushion on man-to-man, and basically it was a combination of let me run the slant route and the quick out route, 2 routes really. And there was so much cushion. It was really pitch and catch for Harrison Franklin. I mean, really, it looked too easy. And you're on the other side, you're like, man, why aren't our guys that open? Right. And I know they had some talent at corner and whatnot with Woolen and whatnot, but I think Adams did get picked on early. I mean, that was pretty obvious that Adams was the guy they were picking on. And then, Witherspoon went over there and, did Witherspoon give up some stuff? For sure. I don't think anybody can say that guy doesn't compete. My goodness. He
made Franklin work for it, right? Like,
yeah,
and Devin had some penalties, but he made him work for it. But Jay, why do you think it felt like it took Walters a little while to make that adjustment? Like even I was just press him, make him beat you over the top, right? Let your pass rush have a chance.
Right. Yeah. So I think Walters has tremendous amount of he's a former player, a high level player. He's coached as a player's coach. I think, and maybe sometimes to his fault, he gives his chance of players to work through it on the field. Like, there's those coaches in basketball. They don't like to take a timeout on a run because I want my team to work through it. And sometimes they're like, take a timeout, right? What are you doing? Right. And that was what we were thinking there. I was like, man, why are they not adjusting? Right. And I think he's got a lot of faith in his players. But the reality is they were outmatched schematically and, I would say athletically with Franklin a little bit. But they did make an adjustment. But when they made an adjustment, that opened up the run game.
Yeah.
Right. So it was really just the Roadrunners basically counting boxes. Right. I mean, they would count the box. They would say, okay, the game plan is obviously to take away Sincere McCormick, and largely did that for the first half. Largely, they had some runs, but it was just, okay, let's just throw it on the outside to Franklin, And so they had to pick the poison, and, they picked Harris's arm, which was pretty accurate all night. But I don't want it to be lost that I thought, although Witherspoon got beat a couple times, the guy competes and makes a lot of flashy plays. I think Adams didn't play his best game. Quan Martin struggled a lot. And I like Sidney. He always seems to be about 2 steps from where he should be a lot of times on the help. And so they wanted to stop the run. And because they did that, the passing was wide open, especially the first quarter and a half.
So what's that mean going into a game against a team that I watched highlights of UTSA's bowl game. I said, Franklin's the guy I'm concerned about. McCormick's a good player, tough player, but I'm like, yeah, you'll run into the better backs in the Big Ten. But Franklin, I thought was pretty good. So like, what stops a team like Virginia or, Purdue that's got some David Bell like play? Like, what's Ryan Walters do in the future to keep that from happening?
Well, it all starts with pressure. Number one, I don't think you can do pitch and catch. Let me play in front of him. Let me just let the ball be caught in front of me and make a play. He's got to find a way to get more pressure. They got pressure in the first series. I mean, wasn't it Keith Randolph got a sack before he got hurt? So it all starts with pressure. I think they've got to find a way to take away just the first and second. I mean, just the 3-step, because that was what's killing them. It was really just a 3-step bam. So like you said, press them, get it over the top. They've got to adjust from what they did. These guys can do that. I know they can. Why wasn't it adjusted sooner? I'm not sure. I think everybody in the stadium was like, what is going on? And again, they weren't working in tandem offensively and defensively like they were before. And so they were on the field a ton as well. And so then they start getting worn out, and that never works out good.
Yeah, I felt like the defense played well in the second and third quarters, and the offense played well. I think it was the second and fourth quarter. So yeah, it just didn't seem like it ran up there very well.
Yeah, no, they had some, and the defense did have some stops, like we said, on the red zone. And what's interesting to me is it gets more compressed in the red zone. So you have to play tighter coverages. Like they didn't want to give up huge, big plays, but they got killed on little plays. I mean,
reminded me of Lovey Ball, Jay. Really reminded me of Lovey Ball.
It was Lovey Ball. And what was embarrassing to me was actually the touchdown catch from Franklin, where like he runs into a blocker. We don't even keep contained on the outside. That was just bad ball. The corner doesn't keep contained. He pokes his head inside. Franklin runs around them for like 20 yards after the catch for a touchdown. It should have been a no gainer.
Yeah.
And so there was a whole lot of things. And quite frankly, it just felt like Harris had way too much time, especially after Mock at the center went out. I thought that was going to be a huge loss. And I think initially it was because he's a good player. But at the end of the day, the offensive line outplayed that defensive line for sure. For the Roadrunners, outplayed them.
Yeah, especially the injuries. That's a concern. And then Keith Randolph being out for we'll see how long. But you said CJ Hart was missed, Jay. Why do you say that?
Well, I think what Hart adds, I think Barnes played good. So I think he's a leading tackle. I think he's a good player. You need a guy that just makes a play for you when you need it, right? And I think CJ Hart has that, right? How many times on third down do we need to get off the field? Mm-hmm. I mean, it was like, and that was what Brett said in his post game. The tail of the game was third down defense. And what I liked about Hart is I found he had a knack in that Nebraska game. When he needed a play, he would make a play. And Hanson's been that guy in the past. So, it can be him. I think Barnes is a good, solid player. I think he's starting material in the Big Ten for sure. But I thought that CJ Hart has a little bit more a little bit more athleticism, the ability to blitz, a little bit of, we don't have anybody creating chaos defensively. Like we need a chaos guy, right? Like Joey Bosa was amazing, but I remember what Urban Meyer always said, I don't count the stacks that Joey Bosa has. I count the chaos that he creates. And we don't have any chaotic guys, right? That's just, man, they mess with you, on the D line or a linebacker. We've got guys there doing their jobs. And so they've got to go find that playmaker to kind of create a little bit of chaos defensively.
All right, Jay, let's focus on the offensive side of the ball. Art Sitkowski's stat line looks pretty nice, but career high in, I think, completions, close to career high in completions, 1 yard short of a career high in yards, career high in touchdowns. But man, it felt like there was a lot left out there. What did you think about Art Sitkowski's performance?
So a couple things. Number one, he's taking care of the football, but the guy might lead in like dropped interceptions, right? Or recall. He's got like 4 in the last game. Like there was 3 last game, and then I was at the pick the game before, but I got called back because the roughing the passer. So it's not like he hadn't thrown it to me. You're a defensive coach, so you're saying, hey, listen, this guy's going to throw it to you. Just be ready to catch it. And nobody can catch it, So number one, I guess he hasn't thrown a pick yet, but that's a matter of time. When guys are wide open, he's pretty good. Tony Peterson and Brett said this, schemed up those plays in the red zone. Obviously saw something when you bring motion to the 2 receiver side, nobody's going to pick up Deuce Spann. No one's going to pick up Daniel Barker. Then they ran it to Daniel Barker again later in the game. Those were his best plays, he seems to throw the ball a lot better to the outside, to not stagnant receivers, but receivers running toward the sideline or, along the sideline. He throws the ball in the middle of the field, and for some reason, it's not accurate. I don't like Deuce Spann had that one. He beat his guy fair and square. He has the guy on his outside hip, just throw the ball literally to the goalpost. And that's a touchdown. That would have been a huge play, right? And so they're getting the plays. They're getting, most of the time they're getting protection. But what I see in Sitkowski is really a lack of confidence and trust when it comes to believing the timing and the routes of his receivers. He's hitching a lot. He's got the arm for it. He just needs to trust it. Again, this is his first start, second game playing a lot. And you have to wonder, if Brandon Peters would hit those balls and how much of a difference that is. And if Sitkowski plays like this, is that enough to ward off, Peters coming back from injury? Because you and I both know it just felt like we didn't have confidence in our quarterback to make a play on third down. It felt like that.
Why do you say that? Like, what are you seeing that makes you think Tony Peterson isn't completely confident in Art?
Well, when I look at it, it looks like on a lot of his completions, it's designed on where this ball is going to. Like this is the guy that's going to be open, which for an inexperienced quarterback is not a bad thing to do, right? I don't see him checking down progressions, doing what we need to do, right? I would, and we've had running back issues, so this is an issue as well because we've had depth issues there with guys getting banged up and not being out there. Like, I don't know if I've seen him check down much to running backs, right? It's just kind of like option one, option 2, it's not open, bam. And we don't have a lot of guys that create separation either. So he's got to throw into narrow pockets. He seems to do better on outside throws from what I can tell. Sometimes he throws in the middle of the field, and I don't know what it is. I just feel like I feel like it's going to be a pick or it's going to be he's just not trusting himself when he throws in that area. So as a fan, and I feel it for the team, I don't feel like there's 100% confidence that they can throw the ball like they need to throw the ball. I think that's the big bugaboo in Illinois, and we're going to see that a lot because what we saw was the edge pressures, right? Taking away the zone play from the backside. So even if you're blocking at the point of attack, they're bringing more than you can block. and saying, okay, we're going to man up on the outside. Let's see if Sitkowski can make plays. Didn't happen.
Yeah. He also had the one on one of the second to last drive. Isaiah Williams opened on a slant route for a touchdown, threw it at his feet. That was a big play that I don't know if people are talking about as much. Too.
That was a huge play, right? And again, that's to the middle of the field. Now, ironically, in the 2-minute drill, he just started trusting himself where he had to go. He didn't have time. And he had 2 good balls to Isaiah Williams in the middle of the field. One of them Isaiah had to go up for. I give him a lot of credit.
How good is he, by the way? Can we throw a positive out there? For a former quarterback in his first 2 games, he looks great. He looks like Wan'Dale Robinson to me.
He's really good to go up as high as he did over the middle, as little as he is on back-to-back plays. Just shows you how tough he is, the kind of guy he is. I'm surprised we didn't see more jet sweeps.
Agreed.
I'm surprised, especially that we're hurting at the running back position. I don't know the status of Epstein. I heard he went out in the 4th quarter. I don't know the status of Chase Brown or
Chase Brown was going to be good last week. And then today he said he's going to be full go. So I guess we'll see. Mike Epstein sounds like he got nicked up, but should be okay. So I guess it sounds okay. Chase Hayden rolled an ankle, but should be available this week. I guess we'll see who dresses each week.
I think it's really interesting. See, one, I think Chase Brown's going to be harder to chase down from the backside than some of these other guys are. Okay. Because he accelerates better. Okay. So that negates some of the pressure that we've been seeing from the edge. Number 2 is he's actually a home run hitter.
Yep.
These other guys, Norwood's a home run hitter if you can get him out. He just didn't have enough reps, right? I think Josh McCray could be a good football player. He is an old school player. He didn't know what he was doing half the time. He probably had 2 or 3 times where he went the wrong way, but he's
John Clay to him, right?
Yeah. John Clay, PJ Hill. He's got a better body than PJ Hill though. John Clay was a man for sure. So, and obviously Bielema likes that. I think that's what they see out of Fagan, the player out of Arthur or Atwood Hammond, whatever, Arthur maybe. And a bunch of guys have offered him now, but I think that's what they see. They want a guy that's just punishing, right? But at the same time, we got to just run the football consistently. Too many negative plays run the football, especially edge pressure.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, Jay, because like a lot of people look at the offensive line and say, "Oh, not playing great." They had 160 rushing yards, but not many per clip. And I went back and watched the film because UTSA did win the line of scrimmage, but you're seeing 8 guys in the box against 5 offensive linemen. We can't expect Illinois to block that, right? So, what's the counter? What should have been the counter for that for Tony Peters?
Well, here's where the trust in the quarterback comes, right? Because if you got 8 in the box, which we had some 8 in the box stuff, and Harris, the quarterback for UTSA, was tearing us up to Franklin. Okay. So you got to have a guy that you're just consistently, we can throw the football, we can protect, we can make people pay. We just don't have that right now. If I'm Brocco Mendenhall, I'm probably putting 8 in the box as well and saying Illinois wants to run the ball. We're not going to let them run the ball. We're going to let Art Sitkowski try to beat us. And so I think you've got to come up with a couple things. One, I think the speed of the jet sweep to get around the edge. And we've seen that with Brett Bielema teams. Melvin Gordon got famous on the jet sweep before he played tailback.
Yeah.
Because Monte Ball played in front of him. So did James White. So that to get to the edge, bootlegs, which Sitkowski has shown himself to be decent athlete on scrambles. I think he can boot, and quite frankly, just throwing the football, just basic completions. Like I said, Sitkowski's not all bad, but I think they lack confidence a little bit in him. But I think that to beat Virginia, they got to let him air it out, even if it is mistakes.
Yeah, and you said the boots, like I felt like attack the flats with the tight end a little bit, right? Luke Ford had 1 target. Daniel Barker, first catch goes for a touchdown, right? Feels like get those guys involved a little bit more. And I love the way Peterson used Barker at the end, kind of in that H-back, kind of get out in the flat. I feel like there's a lot more there.
Yeah, I think Barker's a great player. He makes me hold my breath every time he catches the ball because I feel like there's going to be an excessive celebration. Literally, I'm just like, stop.
To celebrate, though.
Stop. Yeah, it's just – but so, I think, you got to get, in my mind, Barker and Ford got to be out there. I don't care if Barker plays H-back or tight end or receiver. Like, he's better than a lot of the guys out there. I think Donnie Navarro is solid. They just never throw him the ball. And Isaiah's your guy. And Deuce is 2 weeks into playing receiver. You know, how fast is Deuce spin? He looks super fast.
He had played 2 plays, Jay. Should have had 2 touchdowns. If his quarterback threw him the ball, and his quarterback didn't throw him the ball well the first time, right? He still scored a touchdown and tap dance there. Like,
he's a special guy.
Yeah. I asked Tony like how much he can play. I just don't think he knows a lot of the playbook yet, right? Or the route tree. But as a designated deep guy, like probably got to get him on the field because he's the one guy right now that seems to take the top off of defense, right? Like Casey Washington doesn't do that. Donnie doesn't do that. I think you do miss Jafar Armstrong and Brian Hightower. I've never seen Jafar really play receiver much, but he's got speed and some size. He made plays at Notre Dame, and Hightower just is a big physical target. You just don't have that wide out.
Right. They really are missing that. I also, you said, how do we negate that? I would like to see them go a little shotgun quick game with some of their bigger targets when they get them with Barker and Ford. Like, let's see if we can do it. Let's see if we can do quick game to Isaiah Williams, in the slot. He's a bear. He's just, he's just those are the nightmares for linebackers to cover. Like, you can't stand him. Like, the only chance to do is knock him down. So there's a lot of things. At the end of the day, though, when I'm watching the game, we've watched a lot of games, a lot of coaches. It does feel like Brett's in control of the game. Yeah. As far as managing him, it might not be going that way, right? It might be difficult. If we didn't have the specialists we had in this game, that we would have lost by 2 touchdowns. I think they were that big of a difference for us in this game. Probably 7 to 10 points with the punts. And obviously McCord had 2 50-yard field goals. That just doesn't happen at the college level. That 52 and 53 yarder. And those are big, And so I still think Illinois has got to get to the point like Iowa. Iowa's offense is Iowa's offense, but their defense keeps them in every game. And we cannot afford to get into shootouts with people. We just can't afford to trade scores. And we've got, in order for Illinois to win, they've got to keep their opponent in that 20 to 25 point range. That's their sweet spot.
Do you think they have the talent to do that? Like, now with Keith out and CJ out, is there the talent to do that?
No. I mean, I hate to say what it is, but I just don't think. I know they think their D line is deep, but
as you said, is there a guy that wrecks havoc? Like,
I don't think there's the coordinator of chaos over there, right? Do I believe that Ryan Walters is a great coach in doing what he can? Yes. I just don't feel like in the front line, although some of our guys, it's a lot, like, it's kind of a young front line. Some of them, Johnny's pretty young. Randolph's pretty young guy. I know Roderick's had years. I mean, he's old man, but we need we're just not as stout up front as we need to be. And that's always been the case, but also defensive backs wise, we didn't play as well as we could have. And so can we keep the teams at 20 to 25? If we play good red zone defense and get turnovers, yes. But can you have an off day and do that? No. Well, I think a good defense on an off day can still do that, especially with an offense like ours that's going to chew up clock. And so they got to work together. And I think the sum of the special teams, the offense, and the defense can get them to that point. But just defensively alone, are they talented enough? No. They got to work in tandem with the offense and the special teams.
Yeah, Jay, my big takeaway from this, wasn't that, they lost to UTSA. It's the same Illinois team. My thing is, this team has such a small margin for error, right? Because of that talent. Like,
that's a good point.
I think they're going to be in a lot of close games this year.
Right.
Like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of blowouts. Like maybe
Right.
Penn State does, maybe Wisconsin and Iowa do, but there's a lot of games where I feel like these opponents are going to be very similar to you, and they're going to be in really close games. And Illinois just can't afford to miss a streaking wide receiver down the field, or for a punt to hit your butt and then turn it over, right? Like they just don't have the margin for error. Like, or to give up a 31-yard touchdown on the 3rd and 2. Like you just can't have those things. So I still think this team is improved. I think they're going to be in a lot of games. They can't have those games. Like you can't have winnable games and make those kind of mistakes, and the other team doesn't.
Well, you can't spot the team 14 points.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you take away the 14 points, and anybody can do this from any game, right? You say, oh, we beat them 30-23 from then on, right? Kind of, sort of, right? But to your point, you can't be asleep for the first quarter. I mean, our offense has been asleep the first quarter and a half, the last 2 games, right? We got to go in. I don't envy Tony Peterson's job, right? I mean, his receivers are hurt. His right tackle's been banged up. His starting quarterback's played 2 series before he got hurt. And his number 1 running back, who we thought was number 1, we don't know who Chase Brown, hasn't played. So it's hard, but it has to be complimentary football for them to have a chance. And if they're not getting that complimentary football, like in the second half, remember that drive where they probably gained 8 yards the first 2 plays, and then they tried to run the ball real quick, and then they got stopped. And I was like, oh, dude, that's a 3-and-out feels huge for this team.
Yeah.
We're like, even with Rod Smith, they're like, oh, 3-and-out, we'll get the ball back. Let's try to score some. I mean, not that was a good thing, but it seemed huge because, like, man, our defense got to go back out on the field, you know?
Yeah. All right, Jay, like, is there any, like, I'm trying to think, we've seen this team for 2 games now. We get a sample size, we get in-game evaluation. Like, are there adjustments you'd make? Because I got 2 I'd like to throw out at you. And Brett Bielema and Tony Peterson both hinted at this. I don't think your guard play has been great, right? I think
they've been rotating guys in and out.
I think Doug Kramer's been really good. I think Vidarian Lowe has been solid. I think Palcho's played better last week than he did the first week. But those guys are undersized. Like Jarosati and Badovanak are undersized, and Pilstrom's a former walk-on tight end. I think you throw Julian Pearl in there. Seems like he's one of your most talented guys. Throw him in there, whether it's tackle, move Palcho into guard. Right. And as we talked about, like, guys creating havoc, I don't know if this guy can do it, but I haven't seen Isaiah Gay play well yet. So I'd like to see Seth Coleman a little bit more, just to get some length, some athleticism out there. We know he's a freak athlete. I know he's probably not, experienced very much, but might be time to try that.
Ever since Isaiah Gay had 2 sacks as a true freshman, we're waiting for Isaiah Gay to come into his own. And I don't know if it's going to happen at this point. I mean, I think he's a good guy. I just don't know if he's an every down outside backer in this scheme. I like Julian Pearl as far as his frame. Listen, from Danville, Illinois, you're tough. I played against Danville in high school. Those guys don't mess around. From junior football to high school, like, those guys are they're tough. And so, Danville product Julian Pearl, I'd like to see him out there. We've seen him rotate quite a bit at the guard position. And like we've talked about, there's been a good tradition of guards at Illinois. We go back. I mean, Martin O'Donnell with me, great guard. Karras as well. Nick Allegretti in recent history. Kendrick Green. And we've had some road graders in there. And it makes me think, it's always a woulda, coulda, shoulda if you're an Illinois fan. If Kendrick Green was in there, how much of a difference that would make to the run game. Because there wasn't a better down blocker, drive blocker guy, I thought, in the conference last year. Pass game, he struggled some, but I mean, as far as man on man. And so the O-line's got to get better. And I think they're going to make they've got to make some changes to get some edge pressure. And that's what they have to do with Seth Coleman. A lot of the pressures come from the interior guys. I thought Johnny Newton's played actually pretty well for a young guy. I think Johnny Newton's going to be a good player. I don't know if he's the caliber of a Big Ten defensive lineman in the upper echelon right now, but I think he's going to be good. Like, I like Johnny. I think he's going to be a good player.
All right, Jay, before I let you go, just keys to the Virginia game. Obviously a 10-point underdog, which I think before the season they were listed as 11-point underdog. So you didn't get worse there. But coming after a disappointing loss, I mean, you could still end the first quarter of this season
Right.
better than most people expected if you go on the road and beat a good Virginia team.
Well, I think you got to start fast, right? We got down 14-0, number one, in the last game. You got to start fast. Offense has to wake up earlier, right? And I think Peterson will script some stuff to get it going. I think Sitkowski, if he plays, I don't know if Peters or him will play, but whoever plays, they're going to try to take some shots early. I think Isaiah Williams is going to be in the run game earlier. Okay. So start fast. Number two, I don't think we without playing complementary football, we can't go back and forth, right? Excuse me. We have to run the ball, control the time of possession, and get some turnovers. We're going to play great on special teams. We got great specialists. We got great cover teams. Start fast, complementary football, and get some turnovers, because that increases your margin of error. We don't have a big margin of error. When you get turnovers, that increases your margin of error. I still feel confident in this football team. I think it's a more well-coached football team. I think the program's heading in the right direction. At the same time, we're still Illinois, and we got to shake that stigma. Rome wasn't built in a day. Now they're Illinois football. And Brett said, there's going to be days like this. I don't like it, but we knew there'd be days like this and building this up. So that's what I have to say about the Virginia game.
Jay Leman, you're the goods, man. Have a good week. We'll talk to you next week, and we'll see if Illinois can get a big road win, make us forget about last week.
Come on, man. It's all part of the, as Brett would say, the fam-illy, ILL. Let's go.